are convening the governance and the governance and coordination action team meeting on February 11th. Next slide, please. So today our agenda we'll have some brief introductions. We'll have the discussion of infrastructure project list, review of action item list, and a closeout. And hopefully you've received these things in advance so that you can have some idea of how you want to participate and engage in the conversation. The Summary Task Force, as a background, was established by the City Administrator in September of 21. We kicked off the meeting on November 2021. And then we just want to make sure everyone knows that all proceedings are open to the public. We have both the task force and the action team meetings that are accessible to the public. Everything that we talk about, say, and do, and notices are posted on the website, which is dcfloodtaskforce.org. Again, that's dcfloodtaskforce.org. And then we are planning to have in March some public listening sessions so that the public can offer their feedback, their comments, and their input in this process so that we can, continue to check ourselves and include the public in what is being planned. So the task force schedule, the full task force meets every other month on the third Wednesday of the month. We have our next meeting on Wednesday, March 16th. We have action team meetings that meet every month, as we all know. And the residential resilience is on the second Tuesday of the month. And the governance and coordination, this particular action team meeting, is held on the second Friday of every month. Our flood task force final report is going to be due November 22. That's what we're all working to right now to create an action plan. And after the action plan has been completed and submitted, this task force will meet annually. And those annual meetings will include conversations on tracking the the progress of the action plan, and also to continue to discuss budgeting and action plan priorities. Next slide, please. So we do have two action teams, as I've stated. This one is the governance and coordination. We cover categories 5 through 9, and our next meeting will be on March 11th at 9:30 a.m. Next slide. So Meredith Upchurch will discuss or lead the discussion on the infrastructure list. Thank you, Meredith.
Hi, good morning, everybody. Actually, Alan Prop from DEMWA will be leading this discussion as well. And just to kick off what we're going to discuss today, to give the context. So, we've got within this action team, we've got 5 different categories with lots of actions underneath. And so we're trying to work our way through prioritizing these different things to determine what is going to be carried forward. How do we categorize this work? How do we get prioritize this work, get funding for this work? So today we're going to have 2 major things that we're going to talk about. One is this infrastructure project list. And our goal here is to fill the list out, make sure that we've got everything captured that is in progress in some phase of planning, design, or construction, or just concept, or just that we know there's a problem in a certain area and it needs to be fixed or it needs attention. And so, we get this list together, get a little bit of information about it, and then we'll start talking about how do we prioritize these projects? What are the different factors we need to be thinking about? Is it, how much property would be saved from being flooded during, if this infrastructure project would be done? How many homeowners, how many low income residents? How complex is it to do? What agencies can do it? What's the cost? What's the timeline? So there's lots of different variables that can go into that. The second thing, after we talk about this infrastructure list, we'll go through all those categories and the various actions, and some of them are already in progress. So we want to identify those and make sure that everyone's okay with going forward with the ones that are already in progress. So with that, if Alan, are you up?
Yeah. Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, thank you for that intro. And I'm just gonna give like one more minute of stage setting, which also may be a good opportunity if you don't want to listen to me to read through these existing projects that are on here, and kind of set yourself as to what's already here versus what you might see that's missing. So we're at a really important part in this task force process in that obviously with any plan and particularly with this, the further we get on, the harder it will be to go back and drastically change things. And so we want to make sure, particularly before the public listening sessions that are coming up, we want to make sure we have a really strong list of infrastructure projects, so that we are not, 6 months down the line having to go back and change things really drastically or saying we forgot this massive thing. And so that's part of the reason we've cut out such a large amount of time today during this meeting, to be able to really dive deep into infrastructure projects, take some dedicated time, and make sure that we're not missing anything that's really glaring. The good news is we have this really all-star interagency team on the call to be able to, identify gaps that we may have missed when putting together this initial list of infrastructure projects. So during this section, I'm gonna, I'll facilitate, but I'm probably gonna try to take the back seat to the experts who are on the call from various agencies to be able to input, what is missing here or what maybe needs tweaks in terms of the information that is listed here. And I would just say, probably don't worry. We'll worry about scale of project later on, but even if it's a small project that you feel like is missing, let's get it on here so that we can make sure that we're being as thorough as possible. So with that, I will just open the conversation up. Hopefully you all have had a chance to either just now or before the call look through this list of infrastructure projects, but I want to open it up to the group as to either what projects might be missing from this list that we have, or what of the existing projects may need tweaking, whether it's rewording or different information listed in these columns.
So Alan, good morning, everybody, and apologize for being a little late here. Line 12, National Mall Federal Triangle Pump Station. Even though it makes absolute sense, I don't know if the Park Services agreed that they would accept a pump station. I think the project is protecting the National Mall.
Yeah.
How we do that is a different discussion.
Yeah, and hey, folks, this is Brent at DPR. I was actually just looking at that. I was pulling up the Federal Triangle sort of boundary. I don't know if we actually have any, or DPR would have any jurisdiction on any properties in that boundary. So, excuse
I don't
me.
think that's correct.
Yeah.
Would that be tagged as a federal project, an Army Corps project, or maybe that has to be a TBD?
Meredith, isn't that a Silver Jackets item there that's been a discussion?
Stacy might be able to comment on that. I know what we've seen happen this year is that Congresswoman Norton has put that forward in the word authority.
That's fantastic. This is absolutely the right time to do it.
And again, this is the old is it the old post office pavilion, the National Archives Museum? I guess the White House Visitor Center, that whole sort of.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, that would make sense if it was something federal, probably.
Yeah, and Julia's on too. I know NCPC has had a big role in this one.
And though it's a small project, and as Alan said, it doesn't matter if it's small or large. We're rebuilding the flood wall on the Anacostia, and then it's going to build it up to 500-year flood elevations.
That's great. So to be clear, that's something that's not listed that we should add here?
Yeah, that is correct.
No, I think that's line 15.
Oh no, 15 is that's the treatment plant. So I'm talking about the headquarters and main and Oak pump stations.
Right, okay, different area.
In the Navy Yard.
Well, this is Julia. While it wouldn't go, Oh, go ahead, Stacy, you first.
That's fine. Yeah, sorry, I was having trouble logging in, so I had to call back in. Yeah, as Julie was probably going to mention, so this Federal Triangle issue is something that Silver Jackets was looking at. We had a number of workshops and leadership in meetings with the stakeholders and so forth. So, I mean, right now there really is not a lead agency identified. As someone had mentioned, I heard Congresswoman Holmes Norton is trying to get language for possibly the Corps to help do a study, but that hasn't happened yet. So I'm not sure. I mean, for lead agency and funding source, I think there are still kind of a question mark, to be honest. And it does, you know, we're talking about the federal area, IRS, Smithsonian, GSA buildings, but then of course it is a district stormwater system. So that's all I was going to add. Julie, if you have more to add.
No, I think it's a good summary. It's a very, it's an expensive project, and it is one that's complicated by the multiple jurisdictions and the fact that the folks that kind of need the protection are not the same as the property owners on which the solution may be located. And then there's the whole federal local who's funding and how funds flow, which it just makes it complicated, but it's good. The other thing I was going to say, it shouldn't be on this list, but I don't know how to put it in there, is there's the Blue Plains flood wall and there's the Anacostia flood wall. And in between that is a big stretch of federal property at JBAB and NRL, where they are also trying to figure out their flood wall. And, you know, that's part of, so it's not on this list for you guys, but they're like all connected pieces of the puzzle. Yeah. So just however you put in the gotta connect it footnote, that's a gotta connect it footnote thing.
Julia, do you know if it's an active discussion with JBAB and Bowling Air Force Base?
Yes, I mean, we just reviewed their master plan, and it is something that they know they need to do to accomplish their long-term development.
Okay.
As with many things, there's a complicated flooding route, or excuse me, funding route, through DOD's process. And I think the Corps has been working with them, and that it is also something that's come up in the MIRR study that COG is doing. Just to look at the military installation flood risks at JBAB and Navy Yard and Fort McNair.
Julia, thank you. I think that definitely belongs here, even if there's no, you know, internal DC government agency leading on that. I think that absolutely belongs on here. Thank you.
So that would also include Fort McNair, right?
Not that piece, but you know, that's, so if you're doing, you had Buzzard Point on here somewhere, right? And I think McNair is already in that discussion.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah, I think we should put McNair as a separate line though, because it's really uncertain of whether construction could be done together with Buzzard Point, just due to funding source.
Yeah, it's
constraint.
Hi, yeah, this is Stacy again with the Corps of Engineers. Yeah, as far as JBAB, I know we've got a team that's working with JBAB to help repair their existing levee system. So that one, actually, JBAB, I would probably say that's in design. I know they're working on how to modify their levee. But Fort McNair, I would definitely say is in discussion.
I know DDOT has a lot of projects identified or in the works. EJ, are you able to comment on that?
EJ, I think if you're
Sending-
talking, you're really, really faint.
How about now?
Oh yeah, much better.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. It was with me here. Well, as far as the data is concerned, the project shown on line item 19, row 19, citywide stormwater management improvements. This is basically a number of smaller components of projects that go along. It's like a program that we're running. I don't think we can exhaustively put everything down there. It's good that it is the way it is, but it should be understood that way, that these are multiple smaller projects that result in response to like residents' requests, and as well our asset assessment outcomes. And it's not only in design, but it's design and construction. It's a kind of a continuous process. So there are projects under design, and there are projects under construction, and that will continue all the time. And I don't know if we need to add it in here. The other standalone project that we're dealing with flooding is the Cleveland Park drainage and stormwater management improvement project, which would be dealing on the flooding issues that occur along Connecticut Avenue at the metro station, at the Cleveland Park metro station.
Yeah, I think it should be in here because, if we're creating this consolidated list that we're going to share with the public, it should be as comprehensive as possible to show everything the city's doing.
Great. So it's a Cleveland Park drainage and stormwater improvement.
I had a quick question related to the 11th Street Bridge Park. I think DOT is doing some work with that, and of course that will bridge the river, so it won't have immediate flooding implications at the central part of the bridge, but on either end, on Anacostia near the Navy Yard, and thinking about how it touches those riverbanks, that's probably an opportunity to tie into some of these other projects. And I don't know if that's something that needs to be considered for this work here.
Interesting. I don't know how much of a flooding issue we can talk about that, but yes, you are absolutely right. It is, it touches the banks. But I don't know. Anybody can comment on this?
Well, I'll say there would be analysis required to ensure that there's no adverse impact from the
Absolutely.
construction of the bridge.
Absolutely. Yes.
Exactly, no adverse impact, and hopefully in coordination with some of these other flood projects, so that we can, if we're going to put energy and funds into building it, making sure that it contributes to solutions where it can, kind of leveraging the co-benefits.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, basically, what that project is trying to utilize the remnants of the old 11th Street Bridge thing. So it probably would not create a new thing, introducing a new thing to the system. But as Meredith said, it will be evaluated for.
Yeah,
No,
that's great.
So this might just be the way I perceive things. So I beg your forgiveness. But it'd be great to lump these projects into the categories like, is it a storm surge protection? Is it a internal river and flooding protection? Or is it a rainfall protection project?
Agree. If we can add one more column to it, that will serve.
Yeah, good idea.
Yeah, no, what I would say, so I think that's a great idea. I think that's probably the step after our meeting today.
Oh,
Just, yeah, to avoid doing that live.
Definitely not live. Yes.
With the next 4 hours.
Thank you, Alan.
One,
You are saving us. I was like, oh no. Thank you.
yeah, one more idea that actually came from DOEE, which is the flood signs and flood sensor installation at different locations.
Yeah.
This is another project we're trying to pursue, and we're refining scope of work and locations of where to consider this, and assessing funding availability on it. So
Hey,
we
EJ,
might, yes, sir.
that's a fantastic idea. Also, let's talk about joining forces there, because you've got a whole bunch of skill sets. USGS has a lot of skill sets. They might even have funding. I know DC Water has been doing a lot of that. So if we can join forces, we
Great.
may be able to prevent duplications and even help each other.
Great. Yeah. Yeah. We'll learn quite a bit from you guys. Yes, you do have sensors and
Good exchange.
excellent.
Yeah.
And that's a great lead into one of the next topics, but we'll hold that for now because we're already going to greenlight that flood warning sign project. So.
Great.
Yeah. Thank you, EJ. EJ, was there anything else from DDOT? I want to make sure we're staying on time.
This is pretty much it, but there's one thing that I don't know if we need to add it in here, but something that I have in mind is like by the end of 2018, we did an emergency flood response plan for DDAT, which is focusing basically on transportation right of way. And it does have communication plans and traffic management plan along with that as to how to react to flooding. But I think it is, even for DDAT, it is time that we review that thing, because it's some time now since it was completed. But I was wondering if such a plan, I know there was a draft plan that was prepared by, I believe, Army Corps of Engineers. We had discussed about it so many times, but I don't know if that has been finalized, and if there is anything that we can rely on that would coordinate like everybody, instead of doing the effort individually, which would, which needs a lot of coordination. If we have one kind of emergency response plan where we can tie all our inputs into, I don't know how you guys would think about this.
No, that's an excellent point. In the last meeting, we also talked about possibly harnessing some of the cameras around the city. Probably should be a project in itself.
Yeah, I think, and HCMA, I'm sure, has an interest in that as well. Probably that would fall under our emergency response category, which is 9, and we'll talk about some of the actions in the other categories after this infrastructure discussion.
Okay.
Yeah. Hey, EJ, I have another question for you. So I also see that these projects, we're going to convert them into a map, to show where different things are happening. And I think even some of the smaller projects that you all have going would be really valuable to put on that map, just because we will make this public facing. We want to be able to show the public as comprehensively as possible all the areas that are being worked on, no matter how small the project is, because those are the real problems that people are living with on a regular basis. So I think we'd happily take, the larger list of what's going, so that we can incorporate it into
Definitely. Definitely. I think we can georeference all our projects, except for, there are very small things that we do that would be very difficult to look to It is possible to georeference them, but there's not much to talk about them because some of them are just in response to, resident requests. But with regard to like the ones that we work responding to our asset management needs kind of thing, like the culverts management program, we do have a geodatabase for it. We do have a geodatabase for our GI system. So all those can be georeferenced. Probably the GIs as a whole, I mean, like citywide, do have an influence on flooding, though it would be very difficult to imagine them being effective on particular projects. But as a city, they really do have effect.
Thank you, EJ. I know we're time strapped here. I think we only have like 5 to 10 more minutes. So I want to just make sure, because we have a lot of representatives from different agencies on the line, and I know in particular we have DGS, we have HCMA, DCRA, DPR on the line. Folks from those agencies, anything that you would want to add that's not represented here?
This is Vermecia. Good morning, everyone. I guess the only other partner that I don't see on the in Excel is probably Ramada. I know that they have been engaged in some of the outreach that our agency has done. I know that DDOT has informed them on the work that EJ kind of shared earlier in this call about Cleveland Park. But they did bring to our attention a couple of areas of potential projects. I think that it would be helpful to understand what that is. Maybe some of the work that they're observing is more so in the right of way. So that would need to be a coordination opportunity, which we shared with them to leverage Silver Jacket meetings that they attend to bring up some of those potential opportunities there. But that's just a partner that I don't see on the list. And unfortunately, I don't have information to provide to add to the list as well.
Thanks, Vermecia. That's helpful. Any other projects on here? I will note, maybe as like a little bit of a incentive. Obviously, this is going to be really important when DC is looking at competitive grants, whether it's infrastructure package or anything else, other federal funds in the future that might hopefully come out. So if there are projects that you want to make sure are noted, this is really the list to put them in, and now is the time to include them.
Hi, this is Stephen Geyer with OP. I just have a quick small detail on line row 11, the district-wide small parks. In the early stages of that, in the design phase, it's in selection, it's DPR and OP are kind of co-leading. I think as it scales up and moves across the city, I think most of the small parks are owned by DDOT, and NPS has quite a few as well. So there probably would be a partnership there, but at least in the early stages, it would be DPR and OP.
Thanks, Stephen.
This is Monty. I just wanted to ask a point of clarity. EJ brought up Meredith brought up the automatic traffic enforcement cameras. Did you all want to have that included on this list as a opportunity for just to tie into the warning system? Or I'm not sure on this and how we can capture that thought.
Well, I think line 25, I think reflects that item.
Okay, just making sure that we didn't lose something because you brought it up separately, it seemed like. So thank you, that's fine. Just wanted to make sure we're capturing it.
But we do have a separate action, I think, that might be more comprehensive on that.
Why don't we put in parentheses ATE? Why don't we put in parentheses ATE?
That isn't dealing with the ATE. I think the CCTV cameras that we're referring to. I think that is more so dealing with response and leveraging those cameras to share where there's potential areas where we could do detours or so that will help inform potential new flood signs. So it's a part of that category 9 that our agency has, and I believe a couple of our operation teams are on the call to give some more understanding of how we already leverage those cameras. Yeah.
All right, so what we'll do is put a parenthesis, the citywide cameras, and that'll be encompassed of whatever you all want to include there, just so it can be captured for remembering what we're talking about. Okay. Thanks, Jonathan and Vermecia for helping us clarify that.
Sorry to I don't like calling individual folks out, but I want to make sure we hear from DGS just either as a confirmation of we have everything here and we're not missing anything, or if there's anything DGS. I think Matt, you may be on the line if y'all are working on anything that should be or thinking about working on anything that should be included here.
Hey, good morning. Sorry, yes, I'm here listening in. Since DGS is mainly an implementing agency for other client agencies across the city, we take a lot of our direction from the likes of, DCPS and DPR on what projects we implement. I do want to take a look at some of the modernization schedules that we know are upcoming and see if any of those projects fall within the floodplain or are close to, where areas that we might consider higher risk. And I mean, that could be a number of projects and that could be only a couple. I'm just not sure yet. So maybe we can just put a line item for, something along the lines of future capital projects that we're implementing for other agencies. But we can talk through that a little bit more as well, if that makes sense.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. That's really helpful. And in some ways, I think it is almost similar to the DDOT line of just, well, similar in some ways of citywide stormwater management improvements, and that there's probably a lot of projects. So yeah, maybe it's just, I don't even know. Yeah, evaluation of existing DGS projects in stormwater or in floodplains. There's probably a better way of saying that, but that's really helpful. Thank you.
Yep, that sounds good to me, and I will spend some time over the next couple of weeks going through the modernization schedules and at least just mapping out where those projects are and timing for funding as well as geographically.
Great, thank you.
And I'll add, DOEE has done mapping and identifying of all the district building structures that are in the floodplain. I think we may have provided that information to agencies like a year and a half ago when we were talking about the flood regulations, but we can definitely provide that information to each agency.
Thanks, Mayor. I'll reach out to you. That'd be great if we could see that. Thank you.
All right, we have 2 minutes. Any last pressing ones that folks haven't been able to say yet?
We do have one project on Canal Road, the Canal Road culvert project, which we have in the completion stage of the design works, and the construction would hopefully be coming in by the end of the fiscal year 22. Yeah. So everybody remembers the flooding situation that we had in 2019 on Canal Road. People were on the top of their car, roof of their cars. That's the location.
Thanks, CJ. And just to be clear, so that's Canal Road? Okay, perfect.
Canal Road culvert.
Culvert. Okay, thank you.
This is Julia Costner. If this is just to help you identify projects, I don't know if it has a DC impact, but there have been quite a few discussions around flood risk management in the tidal basin that were through the Trust for the National Mall and the Park Service. So maybe that's more just for your information. And I think, was it Bermesia talking about Ramada? I know they also have been trying hard to figure out solutions for their entrances and vents in the monumental core on the mall, at archives, in the Federal Triangle, as short-term solutions to get around the delightful sandbags that they deploy. So just add that in when you talk to them, as well as their stations at places like Cleveland Park.
I saw a question come through the chat, just for clarification. Is NRL a U.S. Naval Research Laboratory? And then there was also a request that, especially for the public that might be listening in, it would be helpful to avoid acronyms, especially in line like 21.
We'll clean those acronyms up later when we post it onto the website. I think we're just trying to quick type them out. So we will absolutely clean them up. And sorry if you're listening on the public. JBAB is the joint base for I'm sorry. Yeah. You could say it, Salil. I just blorbed out of my head. So go ahead.
It's the bowling and joint base next
Right.
to NRL.
Anacostia bowling.
Yes. BOLLING.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, it's not BOLI. There you go.
There you go.
Are we allowed to,
Go ahead.
are we allowed to put our wish list here? Because I don't have any budget for it yet, but we have a serious
wish list. Yes.
Yeah, we have a serious issue in the Palisades area. We have a very how to put it? It's very there's a limitation of the stormwater system in that area, and we have identified this project through our flood assessments a while ago. DC Water has done some studies on it, but nothing has followed up. I believe because DC Water might have considered that this is a DDAT project. Do you know about this, Sanel?
Yeah, DC Water did the initial analysis, like what, 2006,
Yeah.
2008?
Yes.
I think Salil, this is Salil, I believe this has to do with the interceptor.
No, this is a separate storm system.
Okay.
It is the Palisades area, and we have a lot of flooding occurring along Potomac Avenue Northwest, between MacArthur Boulevard and Potomac Avenue. And we do have lots of complaints from residents in that area when we have big storms.
So this is a good forum, because some part of this is going to be talking about responsibilities. I know we have responsibility for maintenance.
Yes.
I don't know if we have responsibility for construction of new stormwater systems.
No, I'm here. I'm not pushing this away to you guys, but I was just bringing forward that an initial study has been done by DC Water, but nothing has followed up with that, and we have identified it in our flood assessment And we have actually presented it for funding in consecutive years, starting 2019 fiscal year, but we never got funded for it.
EJ, look at that. You've got information about our organization I don't have. I will follow up.
No, you. That's not
Sometimes
true.
you're so large, you don't.
Yeah.
Yeah, but just to follow on your question, EJ, wish list projects, the absolutely should be included on here. You know, our purpose is to capture everything, you know, where are all the problems? What needs to be fixed? And then this will lead into figuring out how do we prioritize and get funding for them? Because you can see there's a lot in here that need funding. So
great.
Yeah, please, anybody add on those wish list projects.
I'm not even sure that's a wish list because that's even more advanced than the National Mall project because a study has been done.
Yeah, at least we have scoped it. We do have a scoping for it.
No, but thank you for contributing towards it.
EJ, it's funny, we on a couple of the calls, Meredith and I both were like, yeah, EJ needs to be on the call because we know he's got all of that going on. And we're so happy that you caught the spirit and you got the wish list going. And if there are any other thoughts offline, please add them in the chat. We will populate them and we can work, continue to work on this this draft list, and this will help us as we progress towards this action plan. So thank you. I'm going to move us along to the next section. And Alan, thank you for being, you're really good at facilitating. Maybe you could just take over and do this from here on out. But we just want to move on to the next topic point. Adria, you want to switch the slides back to the deck and we can move forward. Slides. So we're going to talk about now the actionless ideas, and again, that's Meredith. And Meredith, I think you probably have some of the action team leads that will be helping you with these slides moving forward. So thank you.
That is correct. Is the next slide the scoring matrix? Yeah. So in the reminder email sent out for this meeting, and also just as we started this meeting, there's a link to the matrix document and also an attachment in case you don't have access to the OneDrive. So what we have done, as you recall, we started these evaluation list a couple meetings ago and trying to rate them at what kind of effort it would be needed, low, medium, or high, and then what kind of benefit value, low, medium, or high. We've changed our color scheme a little bit to help make it a little more visually understandable. So this is the key that you can use to understand how we are rating an effort as low, medium, or high. And we're rating level of effort, time to complete, and the cost, and then also the benefit value. Low, medium, or high for the scale of benefit, the resilience outcome, and prioritizing vulnerable communities. These are not hard categories. There's a lot of wiggle room between the low, medium, and high. So this is just sort of to help us evaluate what are some of the easy-ish things that we can get going on, or perhaps are already going on, and what are the things that are harder and are going to take a lot more work and money to do. So then for today's conversation, we're going to go through each of the categories, look at what our current action idea list is, and then there's some items that are already in progress or are easy enough, or we just know, like, yes, we are absolutely going to do this. And so we want to green light those. And so those are going to be marked in green as we go through each of the categories, and we want to get just a general confirmation, make sure nobody has any issues with us going ahead. And what going ahead means is we're going to create an action plan. So it doesn't mean the work is actually going to get done in the next 6 months within the action, within the task force timeline. It means that we'll create an action plan to complete by the end of the task force. Also, we do have a template for the action plans. It's not quite ready to share right now, but we should be able to send it out to everybody within a few days. so that you can look at it and we can discuss it at the next action team meeting. So we're trying to make this as simple as possible to go forward. Okay, with that, let's go to the next slide. And this is basically a follow-on from our previous infrastructure discussion, because our category 5 is infrastructure projects. So, Ellen.
Yeah, the risk of everyone getting tired of my voice. I think this one's quick, and Meredith, you can add anything if I'm missing like a discussion point here. But because we've already gone over, or we spent the first hour here focused on adding additional infrastructure projects, I think the next step in the action planning of this is how do we evaluate them, right? And what are the important things to look at? And we have our initial guess here in terms of like these effort and value frameworks. But the ask for this group right now is, are there ways that we should be looking at projects or evaluating the projects, when we're looking for funding, when we're looking for expediting projects, when we're looking for just getting them underway, that are not represented here? So basically, are there criteria that are glaring that we are missing that we should be evaluating these projects under beyond the ones listed here? Meredith, anything you would add to that question? Otherwise.
No, and I don't think we necessarily have to discuss that now. People can send that in or let it marinate a little bit for as we talk about it again.
Yeah, and I think that makes sense, and I don't want to force it too quickly, because obviously this is a really important framework for thinking through what the criteria of what do we prioritize basically informs what are the projects that we're going to be working on most quickly and committing funding to. So maybe I'll just open it up for a couple of minutes if there's anyone who has anything on the tip of their tongue that they definitely want to input here that might be missing from the existing structure.
Yeah, and I'll just add for the action ideas that are not green lighted at this point, that just means we are still we're going to discuss those. We definitely have to work on them. It's going to take some more time to figure out how to actually get them going.
So any thoughts on criteria for evaluating?
Hey everybody, this is Brent. So I know when we do sort of capital project uh, scoring in terms of looking at agency submissions, one thing we look at is sort of there's a few things, project readiness, stakeholder support, either pro or if that's going to be any kind of issue, available budget. Trying to remember. Oh, and risk, I think, was the other big one. So those are some things that we have looked at. I'm not sure how that might apply to this, but I just want to throw that out there in case it's helpful.
That is very helpful. I think that's exactly what we're looking for, Brent. And I'll note, like, I don't think we won't input it live here, but for some of those, I could see how they could fit into these existing evaluation criteria. For others, I think they could either be different ones or expand our definition of these existing ones. So thank you. That's really helpful. If there's nothing else, I think we can probably move on to the next one, but I would say feel free to, as Meredith said, let it marinate and either drop it into the chat or email us afterwards if there are additional criteria you want to be considered.
Okay, let's go to the next category. Okay, so this is so regulations, legislation, compliance, and permitting. I do not see Chris Bailey on the attendee list today. If there's anybody else from DCRA, you can chime in. But DOEE has, these are actions pretty much at this point between DOEE and DCRA. Several actions here that we are ready or already moving ahead with. Item 6.1 is updating the DOE flood hazard rules. That effort has been underway for a couple years, and there has been extensive public outreach and coordination with agencies. And I think we're in the final drafting and getting that reviewed from the legal standpoint. So yeah, so that one we feel comfortable, going ahead with. 6.2, updating DCRA construction codes to adopt the 2021 building codes, essentially. And that requires a backflow prevention valve where possible. Our team, who is involved in the construction code coordinating committee, says that that's already in process. And 6.3 passed DCB 240410 Flood Resilience Act as enabling legislation to the DOE flood hazard rules. That has been introduced by council. There was hearing December and January, and yeah, so that's in process, and I have another slide on that next. And then 6.6, DOE and DCRA to make process improvements to ensure all development in floodplains are properly reviewed and inspected. And that is coordination that's already ongoing between DOE and DCRA to, because there's certain portions of flood prevention or flood risk management within building structures that are managed by DCRA and certain parts that are managed by DOE. And so we're coordinating that to make sure the whole process is covered for various permit types. So there are discussions already in process for those. And then the other ones that are not highlighted are ones that we think are good ideas, but we definitely need some more discussion before we figure out how to move ahead with those. So are there any questions or comments on these items? Okay, not hearing anything. Let's move to the next slide, which is a little more information on the Flood Resilience Amendment Act, which has already been introduced by council and has had a hearing. There's just two key items that are in this act. One is that it authorizes DOE to regulate beyond the 100-year floodplain, essentially gives DOE the authorization to regulate the 500-year floodplain or whatever the floodplain may be identified and mapped as in future iterations. DOE, we think that we already have the authority to do this, but we wanted to make sure that the law was clear. So that's being put in there. And then the second item is also just an authorization, and that's that there can be regulations promulgated that could require flood insurance for new construction and for major substantial improvement. So again, DOE does not intend to require insurance at this point. That's not in the regulation update. And because we know that there's a big gap for low-income residents. And that's why our residential resilience team is really focusing on flood insurance options. But this just enables that to move forward when the district is ready to move forward with it. And what we have been considering is seeing if the flood task force can provide a formal support of this legislation, just to show that there is a good amount of support. So are there any questions on this legislation?
Hey Meredith, this is Brent. I did
Yes.
have just, sorry, I did have just one quick one. Is this, I'm just thinking, I guess this would apply more to homeowners than Like the district agencies, like I know,
For the
DPR.
insurance, you mean?
Oh yeah, sorry, the
Yeah.
flood insurance requirement.
Yeah, private. This would apply to any private
G-
properties. Yes,
Got it.
is self-insured.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions on the legislation?
So this is Jane Waters with ORM, and I just want to make sure the district's not self-insured for flood. Maybe I misunderstood, but
Oh, sorry,
we purchase flood insurance. The Office of Risk Management purchases property insurance on district-owned buildings, and that includes flood coverage as well. So we do that now. We've done it for a while.
Thank you for correcting that, Jane.
No problem.
And Jane, Jed presented the work that you've done at the resilience meeting. Is really good work.
Oh, thank you. I was on the call. Thank you much.
Oh, you were? Okay.
Okay, well, I think in the interest of time, we'll move forward. And just as I mentioned, we may be bringing this up at the task force for confirmation of task force support on that legislation. We'll follow up over email with that. Okay, moving on to category 7, mapping and modeling. And I think many of you know that DOE has a project to create an integrated flood model. So that's a big effort in the furthering our mapping and modeling. We think that we may be awarding the contract within the next month or so, which is very exciting. It's been many years in progress. But there are a few items that are already in the work that can be put in place now. And 2 of those items which I've highlighted in green here, 7.3 and 7.4, are to create updated floodplain maps for the Watts Branch area and for Oxen Run area. So that's creating a letter of map revision, which would officially update the floodplain map. So that's using modeling data that's already been performed by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. Just want to pause there to see if there's any questions.
Hey, Meredith, previously in the list of projects, I saw a blue-green infrastructure project for Watts Branch.
Yes.
Once implemented, would that change that map any?
So that's a good question. Don't know the answer.
We can take it offline.
It's generally to
this is Stacy. Yeah, I was just going to say, I do think that's going to be a long way off, that blue-green infrastructure of doing a lot of small projects. I think ultimately, if it did make a large difference, you would want to redo your mapping. But I think that's pretty far off.
Great, thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah, and at least for Watts Branch, I think the results are showing that the 100-year floodplain will be reduced. So that means some residents will no longer be within the 100-year floodplain, which should reduce the cost for flood insurance.
Yeah, that's correct.
So then one more item that's already in the works, item 7.7, creating a standard procedure to document floods and affected buildings after they occur. And our flood team can fill in what we actually call that. If anybody wants to chime in.
7.5. We just had a discussion, EJ, myself, and joining in the USGS. USGS already has stream gauges because I know I get the alert on my phone for Watts Branch. So there's some stuff out there already. We're installing some in the sewer system. So I think that could be green. That's been started.
Great. Would DC Water be the lead for that?
We don't mind leading the effort, but it'd be a group of folks that would do it. None of this is a single agency lead.
Absolutely. So being the lead agency here just means you're going to put the
Sure.
plan together and make sure that
Yeah.
somebody's taking responsibility.
You can put a name against it. We'll step to the plate.
Wonderful. Great. Thanks, Son.
Any other comments or questions? Okay, well, I think then we could move on to category 8. And I'll pass the baton back to Alan from demo.
Yeah, thanks, Merida. So the two green ones here are 8.1, which is designating attendees for select district agencies to attend quarterly DC Silver Jackets meetings, and 8.4, which is conducting yearly interagency outreach on flood risk, available programs to reduce it, and insurance. For 8.1, I think we already have designees going to the DC Silver Jackets. So I think we may have Josh on the call from DOE. Josh, can I put you on the spot and see if you know who are the attendees for the Silver Jackets?
Sure. It's actually quite a long list.
Mm-hmm.
So I can it's probably best if I put it in the chat, maybe.
Okay.
Hey, Josh, maybe you could send it to Monty and she could add it to the meeting minutes.
Okay, because you want the entire, like, you want the each agency.
Ideally, yeah, I think so.
Okay.
I think we may, well, just for the purpose of this, it may be just the district agencies.
So right now, so just for district agencies, like, I guess, and Stacy can correct me if I'm wrong, I guess right now we have DOE, HCMA, Office of Planning, Deputy Mayor for Public Safety and Justice, Department of Public Works, DCRA, DDOT, DISB, WMATA, DC Water. Well, regional would be WMATA, MWCOG, DC Water, and then federal, we have U.S. Army Corps, FEMA, NPS, NOAA, USGS, the U.S. Army Military District, the U.S. Navy Naval District, the U.S. Navy JBAB. We have GSA, EPA, NCPC, and the DC National Guard. And so that's kind of like, I guess, our official list. And then we also have George Mason University, Georgetown, University of Maryland, University of District of Columbia. So I can put that, I can send that over. But for the district, I'll repeat that too. So for the district, it's DOE, HCMA, Office of Planning, Deputy Mayor for Public Safety and Justice, Department of Public Works, DCRA, DDOT, DISB, and then regionally DC Water, WMATA, and MWCOG, just for the district agencies there. And that's like kind of the official list. So I know that other members also join, but
that's great. Yeah, thank you, Josh. That's super helpful. And if you could send that list to Monty, that would be amazing. I think this action then, because that's a really comprehensive list, this action may just be formalizing that so that it's kind of publicly shared knowledge who is attending that rather than, doing anything different.
Yeah, and what I'm wondering is if the reason that this got put on the list, is there, and maybe this could be discussed offline, but is there participation that needs to be happening that isn't happening, perhaps on a routine basis? That maybe that's what needs to be addressed here. I don't know. Perhaps Josh, you or Stacy can comment on it.
Stacy, I would just add, I think it would just be good for the folks here to look at the list of DC agencies, see if there's anyone that we're missing that's, involved in this task force or not, that we should be adding. And then again, I think maybe, I think a number of the agencies are very active, attend every meeting. Some not so much are those ones that we want to reach out to and ask them for to try to participate more if possible. Over.
Give us a brief summary of what the Silver Jackets is and what it does.
Oh, sure. Yeah, so it's an interagency flood risk management team. Basically, led by DC. We have one in each state, all 50 states, some of the territories, and DC. And basically, they're just federal, state, regional, local agencies that all have something to do with flood risk. We coordinate and collaborate every often. It's quarterly for DC, and really just work together to try to reduce flood risk. And we do some interagency proposals together. We've done a number of those, like the Federal Triangle, Watts Branch, and so forth. So we do projects together, but then we also just do a whole lot of coordination and collaboration, try to prioritize things. Over.
Great. So
I'm sorry. I just want Victor Ukbolo has written in the chat. He wanted to add something to category 7. So if we just want to go back just to add that in to not miss it. Victor, if you'd like to come off mute and maybe we go back one slide and then we'll continue to go forward. I just think that it's an addition and I want to make sure it's captured in the conversation.
Yeah, thank you, Monty. Just quickly, just responding to Meredith's comment just before we move to 8. Apologize for being slow in getting my comments in the chat in time, but I did want to add to 7.7 for context and clarity that that action is related to the district's requirement under our participation in the National Flood Insurance Program to conduct substantial damage assessments after flood events have taken place. And these assessments require collaboration with multiple agencies, DOEE as the flood administrator, the code official, which would be DCRA, the emergency manager, HCMA, and of course, fire and safety, to do a series of activities and information sharing. And we've already begun some of that process just in terms of initial discussions about what the process is. It's also important that we note that this particular type of assessment is different from the damage assessments, and sometimes they get a little confused. And so I just wanted to offer that for context and clarity for 7.7.
Thank you, Victor. So my understanding of 7.7, and Meredith, please jump in, is purely from a modeling perspective. And we just went through this in Detroit. It's very important to document depth of flooding to validate the model, because the model is built with the best available data, but when something does happen, you want to go in and get real-time data and then fill in the model. So to support the model, you got to do depth of flooding. And when you go through in different areas, you find out how deep the flooding was. And where that comes in useful is then if there's another storm coming that's anticipated, you can predict where the flooding would occur and how deep would that be. Was that correct, Meredith, on 7.7?
Yeah, that's one aspect of it, yes.
Right. Okay. It's also what was discussed, but that's what Victor said, plus this additional information, how it's used.
I wanted to make a quick plug. It's not on the list, but it's because it's been an ongoing project. I forgot to mention this, Meredith, yesterday when we were going over it, but just the DC Flood Risk Viewer generally, I'll put a link in the chat. We're continuously upgrading it. And I think a lot of the flood risk viewers across the nation are sort of outdated. You know, they kind of look like Windows 95 in terms, you know, like it's mobile friendly and we have a completely new interface. And we've done a lot of, with like our depth damage functions, we have full depth grids, we have social economic layers, we have political boundaries, we have critical infrastructure emojis you can click on. We've pulled a lot of information over. You can click on a building and you can look at its potential damage. And also polygon-based analysis, given a 100-year flood based on the tax assessment. And then also we're currently upgrading that to do like story maps. So users can upload their own, it'll be approved by us at DOE, and then they can upload their own experiences, and we can actually backdate that. So if you have like the 1936 flood, you can use it on the map. So we have a completely new interface. And then we also have search terms for social media. So that's a project that is kind of ongoing that we're going to continue to update with our CTP grant from FEMA. But just making a plug for that because it's sort of already, I guess, greenlit. But I would encourage people to go there and check it out in terms of the mapping. So you look at something like doing stream gauges, and we even have our forecast on there. We can consistently add things to that. And if anybody, that's a good point. Like for the task force, if anybody has something that thinks would be valuable, like one of the things is the resilience focus areas that Office of Planning is working on. Adding that to the viewer, those sort of things. Trying to really make it a one-stop shop for flood risk viewing in the district. So I'll go ahead and put that in the chat.
Josh, that's unbelievable. I did not realize you had all that out there. I don't know how many people know about it. So it'd be great to put that also in the meeting minutes and maybe accessible on the website as a link.
Absolutely, yeah. And we also have, even for like developers or permitting folks, we have the full, like if you want to look at the LOMARs or the levy system, or if you want to look at the BFEs, we have all of that in there as well. So it's actually very comprehensive, and you can really get into detail about that. So.
Yeah, in the interest of time, I think we need to move on.
Yeah, and I mean, I think in the interest of time, we could probably move on from this too. The only other thing here is conducting yearly interagency outreach on flood risk, available programs to reduce it, and insurance. So I think this one, the thing to note is that it's primarily has been probably and will be DOEE that's doing this outreach, but it'll probably have to be expanded, or will have to be more omnipresent, and B, other agencies will probably have to will be contributing to this as well. So I think the path forward on this is probably evaluating the current outreach and current outreach gaps that should be considered for particularly future programs that will come out of this.
Yeah, and I'll just add, this is an area where the Silver Jackets does a lot of work as well. And last June, jointly, multiple groups sponsored the first DC Flood Week, where there was a lot of outreach. And there's another Flood Week planned for this June. So yeah, we know outreach is a responsibility of many agencies. So DOE will just act as the point agency within the district on what's going on.
Meredith, isn't 8.2 already working? The Drainage Committee, the one you started?
We don't have enough time to talk about that right now. Let's save that.
All right.
I love how Salil is always thinking. And so we're going to move to category 9. We have about 13 minutes left in our conversation today. So we'll just keep moving forward, and we'll put some agenda items in for next meeting. Thank you, Salil, and everyone else.
So Vermecia, can you speak to this category?
Sure. As we had talked through this, Meredith, I think you wanted to get a better update on the highlighted in green section. Is that correct?
Yes, we've already talked about this a little bit in today's meeting, but yeah, we wanted to get confirmation that this is a go-ahead.
Yes, it is a go-ahead. We just had a meeting yesterday with DDOT and DOEE. So essentially, we're working together, multi-agencies, to verify locations and really confirm scope and timeline. What kind of equipment will we need? How will we install that? So that kind of plays into some of the conversations earlier, and is a great tag team to the infrastructure listing, because what is driving the prioritization list is actually from DDOT's flood assessment that EJ had mentioned. So of those of the locations that they have done assessments on, which I will be very quick with, which was 8 locations. Palisade is one of those, which was also brought up today. Federal Triangle, Petworth, 16th and Rock Creek Park, 295 East Capitol, 295 Nellie Helen, where I can intimately tell you issues, 295 in Chesapeake, South Capitol, and MLK. Malcolm X, I could tell you that as well. So those are some areas that they have done assessments on. And so right now we're just trying to figure out where potentially a flood sign, which would essentially be when what we're looking at is working with the vendor. So the flood signs would be more so when water reaches a certain level. On the sign, if you can visualize the sign, the sign lighting will light up, warning people not to cross the water because it's too deep. We have some visualizations of that that we can share in any form. And then as far as the flood sensors, we're looking at working on radar sensors because they're more accurate, and then there's minimal risk and damages. So and with the both of those types of equipment, they will be in different locations based off of those assessment locations I just shared earlier. Flood signs will be more in the intersections, and flood sensors will be along streams near traffic. So as you can tell, doing that and figuring out where they would go and is going to take a couple of months. We actually have we're scheduled to do our first visit of those sites next week if everything works out according to plan. But yeah, so that project is moving along. As far as the funding that we're leveraging, I'm gonna put in the chat the hazard mitigation funding that we're leveraging. It's actually the post-disaster funding that we received, that every actual state received based off of our response to COVID. So I'll put in the chat so you can have more information. I know we're short on time. But yeah, the other points that are that our agency is leading, the operations team is not on the call at this moment, but I'm more than happy to answer any questions or get any feedback from you all. But I know we provided some extensive notes to the right of the screen, so I can follow up here as well if anyone has any questions. But let me put the link in the chat.
Thank you, Ramicia. So we're gonna we'll take all the items that have been put in the chat. We will review them and make sure that it gets incorporated either into these spreadsheets, and we will certainly circulate. And of course, it will be in the minutes. And I think that there's some resource links that will go onto the website as well. So we have a lot of things to do post meeting, but we appreciate all of the conversation and feedback as well as input. So next slide, please. Great. So Meredith, again, please.
Yeah, I think we've had a great, robust discussion today. Where this is going to take us, in addition to the groups that are going to go forth and work on the action plans, some of the topics that we think are going to come after this for some of our next meetings are starting to talk about funding sources and funding options, and continuing to go through our action list and determine what are we ready to move ahead with, what can we greenlight, and what agencies are going to lead the efforts. We also have public listening sessions coming up in March, and then our next task force meeting also in the middle of March, and our anticipated items for that task force meeting. Next. I don't think Opera is, Opera, you are on the call. Are you able to speak to the public listening sessions?
I'm not sure if she's with us right now. She may have stepped away, but I can cover this.
Okay.
So we've been talking about this at every meeting. We want to make sure it's very clear that the public will have an opportunity to participate in this conversation, offer some feedback, some comments, some input. And those meetings are going to be posted soon. We have 2 sessions that we've agreed to, that we have planned to do, and we will have them at different times during the day so that we can capture the most amount of public involvement as possible. And they will be over the course of 2 days. And so the intention is that we will share some information so that the public understands where we are to date with where, our discussions, noting that we are not finalized on anything. We are in the middle of this the capturing of information and consideration of ideas and priorities. So this is a perfect timing for the public to walk into this conversation and participate. So those dates will be posted. We have some outlet schedules, some outreach lists that we will all be using, and we hope that the action team members will also share this information on your own social media platforms and other outreach lists that you have as well. So we will need your help to make sure we get as many folks as possible to speak up. And that is it for our public listening sessions. So Meredith, I think this last slide is yours, and then I will close out the meeting.
Yep. Okay, here's your homework, action team. Keep adding infrastructure projects to the list. We sent you the link in the email prior to the meeting. If you don't have access to that link, just send them back to me or to Alan or other key leads to add in. We will send an action plan template for everyone to review. This will be what we'll use to create our action plans. So we are trying to make this as simple as straightforward as possible. And so we're looking for feedback on that template. We'll get that out to you in a few days. And lastly, as we mentioned, the actions that we have greenlit, once we get the template finalized, start working on those action plans. Anything else to add, Salil?
I think this was a very good discussion today.
Okay, anybody else? Back to Monty.
Great. So we are closing out our meeting. I just want to make sure that everyone's aware, because we do have the dates already publicized, but just want to make sure it's very clear that we do have some meetings coming up. The Residential Resilience Action Team meeting will be on Tuesday, March 8th from 2:30 to 4. We also have our next Governance Coordination Action Team meeting on Friday, March 10th at 9:30 a.m. I'm sorry, it is March 11th. Sorry, we'll make a correction to that. Friday, March 11th. And then our full task force meeting will be on March 16th from 2 to 4. And I believe the next, excuse me, there is a correction here as well. The next Residential Resilience Committee will be 2 hours and not 90 minutes. And we decided on that because of just the detail of the conversation with the insurance products and the risk transfer mechanisms that we want to discuss, and it needs a little bit more time. So we will make that adjustment as well. Apologize for these for the discrepancies here, but we'll make sure it's posted on the website the right way. With that, I don't think we have anything else to talk about. This has been a great conversation. The flow was fantastic. Really, really appreciate everyone coming to the table with their wish list, with their ideas, with their cleanup and suggestions on what we've already captured. And we owe you quite a few things, so you will be getting some things from Meredith, Nick, Salil, and Opera in the coming days. So thank you again for your participation, and happy Friday. Have a great weekend, everyone. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.